It was so dark. The kids were asleep in the back of the Suburban, whimpering in their sleep as we made it through the mountainous pass to make it home. There was also a gentle drizzle of ice and rain mixing on the highway in front of us, a definite sign that weather conditions were about to go from bad to worse. But still, we were tired and desperate to get home, and so my husband pressed on, rubbing his eyes as we turned down the next road. "It looks like the main highway is shut down," I commented, noting the flashing lights up ahead. And then we saw an exit toward an older road, one that, for the most part, looked abandoned. "Let's take the next turn. It's probably a shortcut," he told me as we moved out of traffic to go toward the narrow exit. "You sure?" I said, reading the sign. The name of the highway was Clear Creek Road, and I quickly reminded him that there is a bit of a local legend around these parts about it. "That's just an old wives' tale. We'll be fine," he insisted. Before long, the lights of the highway were long gone, and we were shrouded in darkness. Not even the stars above could guide us down the dreary road. We drove on for a while without incident. Just a quiet night with little to no sights to be seen, except the occasional blur of trash going across the highway. I was tense though. It felt like the road was abandoned for a reason, as though we hadn't been meant to come here. And then as we passed over a ridge, I spotted flashing lights on the side of the road. As we got closer, I realized it was an 18-wheeler that had ran off the road into a ditch. It was slightly turned on one side, with the tires on our side leaning up slightly in the air. It looked like they had experienced a flat and struggled to maintain control of the wheel, using the ditch as the easiest escape to avoid a worse collision. "Oh my goodness," I said with a soft gasp as we slowly passed it on the left. "I'll try to call someone," my husband offered as he got out his cell and we slowed down around the next curve. I couldn't see the driver, but the roar of the engine told me that the wreck must have just happened. "The driver might be hurt. We should stop and help," I suggested. He was distracted by his phone, not able to pick up signal, and I insisted that we slow down and pull over. "Fine, but you stay here with the kids," he decided. He put on our flashers and grabbed his coat in the middle console before stepping out into the bitter cold. I turned and watched him trek off towards the driver's side of the truck, the backseat wiper of the Suburban just barely making him visible. He reached up to grab onto the side rail of the truck step and pulled himself up to the driver's side door, struggling to open it. And then he wiped away the frost on the window and peered inside, immediately jumping down in surprise, as if he had just seen something unimaginable. He ran back to the car and opened the door while trying to catch his breath. "I need your help. The guy is bleeding out," he exclaimed. The kids were starting to wake up. "Mom, Dad, where are we?" Rosie muttered as she stretched. Her foot kicked Caleb and the two began to whine, frustrated that we had interrupted their nap. I bit my lip, not wanting to worry them, and said, "Oh, we had to pull over. Someone had an accident and we're gonna go try to help them." "You two stay here and keep trying to get a signal to make a phone call. Can you do that for us?" Dad said. Rosie was fully awake now and nodded firmly. Taking her dad's phone and distracting her younger brother, I reached behind and ruffled Caleb's hair, and then unbuckled to go join my husband. He popped the trunk and took out our first aid kit. The stillness of the night made me nervous, so I chatted nonchalantly as we walked towards the truck. How long do you think he's been out here? He looked like he was beat up pretty bad. Lots of blood loss, but could have just happened 10 minutes ago. He said as he got up to the door again and reached inside his kit to find something that could break the window open. Smashing the glass open with a crowbar, he reached through the broken glass and unlocked the door. And then he gently reached over to the passenger side and instructed me to go around. Carefully, I slid into the ditch, glancing back at the car to make sure that Rosie and Caleb were listening as I climbed into the passenger cab. I held back a scream as I saw he wasn't exaggerating about the blood. Long deep scars ran across his stomach and thighs, as though he had been attacked. His outfit made me think of an old Western reverend, but apparently no amount of prayer had helped this man tonight. My goodness, what could have done this? I asked as I tried to search for a radio, but the cab didn't seem to have one. There was paperwork scattered everywhere, documents that seemed to be for different locations and shipments, but none of it told me who this man was or what had happened to him. Help me get him out on the ground, my husband ordered, preoccupied with the task at hand. I nodded and reached under the driver's shoulders, grabbing a hold of his upper body and lifting. Gingerly, we climbed out together towards the snowy earth. As we did, I noticed the driver's wallet fell out, and once we had settled him, I checked it for ID. His name was apparently Philip, and he had hailed from somewhere in Nevada. You're a long way from home, Father, I muttered as we used what little alcohol we had to dress the wounds. As I turned back towards the car, I heard the cowboy gasp for air and his eyes darted out, looking confused and frightened. Calm down, you've been in an accident, my husband said. BS, where the heck am I? The man said as he pulled up on my husband's eyes and looked down at his scars. Slowly, it seemed like the gears were turning in his head as he realized how he had come to be here. You need to leave, Philip said to us. His voice was dead cold. What? We can't just leave you here. You need medical assistance. I chided him. Quickly, the gunslinger pushed back and grabbed a bowie knife from his back pocket. Get your hands off me, he demanded. My husband obediently listened, and the man stood up, looking toward his 18-wheeler. He ran toward the back. I hadn't noticed it before, but the door had been slightly ajar. He quickly pushed it open, and his eyes widened. We curiously followed and peered inside. It looked like there were chains dangling from the roof and dried blood on the floor. Had whatever he was hauling broken loose? My heart dropped as I realized this seemed like the beginning of a horror movie. Get in your car and drive away from here now, Philip ordered. And then we heard a scream from our own car. Instantly, my husband turned around and ran toward it, and I followed, my head spinning as I tried not to imagine the worst. What I saw made me sick to my stomach. There was something climbing on top of the Suburban, a gray, fleshly creature that looked half man and half amphibious beast. Long bony protrusions pushed out from his back as it breathed in and out, as though it were still transforming even now. He waved at the creature to get its attention as I froze in place. Our children were right under its maw, mere seconds from being torn to shreds. And then the creature finally caught sight of him and leapt toward him, snarling as its skin spread out like wings. The two tumbled into the ditch as Philip ran up beside me and grabbed my arm. "Get your kids and go," he insisted. "What? No, I can't do that. My husband," I insisted. "Just go," he shouted as I heard him scream in the shadows. I hesitated, my whole body too numb to make a choice. And then I saw the Reverend take out his knife again, and he moved towards the creature to help my husband. I watched for a few seconds as the two men took on the creature, too confused and frightened to move. And then my partner shouted at me to leave. He looked right at me, and we shared our last tender moment together. And then I hauled it out of there. I think I heard the tires squeal in the snow as we left him there on the side of the road, fighting for his life. We drove for a good few miles, all of us too frightened to even look back. I kept clinging to the wheel, sobbing hysterically and trying to keep the kids calm, but it was impossible. What the heck had we just seen? It defied explanation. Eventually, we made it to a rest stop and I ran inside to phone the authorities. Two deputies from a nearby township came to meet us, and I guided them back down Clear Creek Road to find my husband. It was so dark. The kids were so exhausted from the nightmare we had endured that they couldn't keep awake. And the road seemed so much more deadly now as we drove back. Just when I thought that it seemed we were taking longer than usual, we were back near the highway that we had just first turned off of, and I pulled over in confusion. A few seconds later, the deputies were tapping on my window. "Ma'am, are you sure it was this road? I didn't see a thing," the officer commented. I hadn't either. Not a scrap of evidence to suggest that there had been any vehicle out there stranded. I couldn't even seem to find the words to say. How could they have simply vanished? "Ma'am, I would suggest not taking this road again. It's said to be haunted," the second deputy declared, clearly deciding that I had lost my mind. They left me there, on the side of the road, as I watched cars zoom by and avoid the deserted highway. None of it made any sense, but I knew that he wouldn't have just left me and the kids. Slowly, I took out my phone and I tried to call him. It began to ring and I held my breath. I just needed to hear his voice and I would know that everything was okay. Instead, as the dialing stopped, I heard strange rasping. "Hello, Philip?" I asked. And then the receiver died. I tried to call back, but suddenly the call wouldn't go through. I clenched the wheel again and I started to cry. This couldn't be happening, I told myself, over and over as I struggled to drive. We made it back home on the normal highway, and as we pulled into the garage, I glanced over at the passenger seat and again broke down in tears. I saw Philip's wallet there, and I felt so stupid for not noticing it before. Rosie and Caleb didn't understand what had happened either. They had cried for days afterward. They still don't. but I know that something terrible and uncanny happened that night on Clear Creek Road. I've kept the wallet for a year now, my only proof that maybe my husband is still out there somewhere. I think now that the kids are back in school, it's time I try to search and find out. Wherever this mysterious Hollow Valley is, I think it holds the answers. Gloria Riley, February 2020.